We have 6 wonderful people here with us today. I'm guessing you know who they are, but I'm still going to introduce them. I'm going to start at the end with Larry Bagby, who played, of course, Larry on Buffy.
What a stretch.
And look for your buttons as well, as you'll find all of them on here. Next we have Mark Metcalf, the Master, the big bad from season 1. Then we have Sarah Hagan, who played Amanda, Buffy's, one of Buffy's counseling students who became a potential slayer, who became a slayer. And we have Mike Rad, who made a very memorable appearance in the 4th season premiere as the vampire rookie.
That's the bad.
And we have Iyari Limon. I hope I got any of that right.
I don't
know.
know.
You do it. I should have asked.
Iyari Limon. Limon! Iyari Limon, we're coffee.
Nothing that comes out of my mouth is that beautiful. Sorry. Who played Kennedy, the vampire slayer and the potential slayer and love interest. And we have Clare Kramer, who played Maleficus and Glory.
The great Glorificus. The
most wonderful, the most interesting thing happened. I've been asking people about what questions I should ask you. Now, I think mostly I just want to hear all of you talk. But I asked a few people, what questions do you think I should ask? And then some of the answers I got were sort of similar, so I finally started asking, what questions are you expecting me to ask? And I got one answer back for every single one of those. It's been 25 years for some of us, like Mark. It's still been... You've been here from the beginning, Mark.
Yes.
But it's been 25 years for us watching the show.
I was 4 when we made this.
So the question that every single person I ask suggests that I ask each of you is, if your time working on Buffy has impacted your life, how has it changed your life? What kind of impact has it had on your life, if any? And would you like to talk about that on this special anniversary? So let's start.
Save it for your shrink.
No, it's for an audience.
Oh, yeah. Our audience is our shrink. Some of us. Some people are just healthy.
Anyone have any?
Well, I mean,
Look at me.
I never started doing conventions and meeting fans until I did Buffy. And so that's been really special for me, is coming to meet all of you all at these conventions. So I think that's very cool. Yeah, I don't think I would be doing it if it wasn't for Buffy.
Yeah, that's how it started for me too.
Yeah.
First, initially, just the idea of these conventions, I never thought, that I was worthy, because I hadn't done anything that people had been talking about, really, yet. But, after that introduced me to the world of the Comic-Cons and just this last few years with Hocus Pocus being bigger. But it's been great. And the other thing, quickly for me, this character I played has impacted me greatly in that it's very touching to meet people that were dealing with, coming out and trying to deal in high school when it wasn't something that people talked about. It was like voodoo, right? So I love the fact that I could be of some service in that way, because there's so much mental health and issues. None of us need to judge anyone. We all need to be kind. I'm grateful that I could play. I've played so many bullies in my life, so it's nice to kind of give back in a way like that for me.
I will say that I never, heard of conventions until I was asked to do conventions soon after Buffy ended. And I didn't realize the impact that this show had, and the fan base, and the loyalty, and decade after decade it continues. And that to me is just mind-blowing, and I have so much like respect for the fans and these. Is that my timer? Am I time up? It's my reminder to take my vitamins. But I have to say, like, it's so cool to see that this timeless, show, this to be part of this cult classic, to be linked to that somehow, to see, having been single and then having kids, and now my kids' friends and my kids are watching the show, and it's like, wow, it's really cool to be a part of that. I feel really grateful and blessed. I had no idea coming into the show that 20 years later, I'd be still meeting wonderful people and fans. And I gotta say, I love meeting the fans. I think that's who, we're grateful for them, and that's why we're here, and that's what makes the show. And I mean, I just love it. I love traveling, I love meeting you guys, and it's cool now that I get to share with my daughter. I'm like, babe, and so now I think we're gonna start like watching it from the beginning together, which is kind of cool. So just being a part of that community, and that loyalty, and that, it's just really cool. I feel really, really proud of that. So I had no idea going into the show that, like I said, 20 years later, right? Yeah. So it's really cool. And thank you guys. You guys, fans are like, I think probably the best part. Like, it doesn't die because of you guys, and it just keeps on. I mean, the writing is, the writing is just great. Timeless. Yes. So yeah, it's been great. And as you can see, we don't age either. So cool. Thank you guys for being here. Yeah.
I have to say that before I got Buffy, I was a huge fan of the show. I was like, you guys, you know what I mean? I was like, this is my favorite show because it checks 2 boxes that I love. One, I love vampires, and I love anything in high school, coming from the John Hughes thing. Anytime there's a scene where a guy's nervous to ask a girl out, I love it. Love it. So, and I love Buffy because it put it on another level, the writing and stuff. And I followed it, I visualized getting it, and then when I got it, it helped my career after, So it opened up doors for me that wouldn't have opened up if I didn't get on a show like that. And like you said, we didn't know when we got on it how big it was going to be. I think I knew it was big because I was so into it and I knew it was going to last, but I didn't know, I had no idea how, but it did, and I'm grateful. And this is my first convention, so I'm like, I would be there if I wasn't here.
Well, so Buffy is, one of the reasons that Buffy left such a long and lasting legacy was its ability to weave fantastical elements into everyday problems. So what was it like? Some of you were big villains. Some of you were wonderful heroes. What was it like to operate in this sort of hyper reality where life is playing out the way it feels? And is there anything that stands out about your time on the show about working with the fantasy, working in fantasy world, having super strength, being super fast, being very, very old? That stood out.
I just got old.
How did working in a supernatural world affect your performance, your portrayal, your experience compared to playing things straight?
I mean, I can jump off with that one. I'll let Mark talk about being super old. Although, no, I don't think your character was as old as mine. I'm not
Say
sure.
that again?
I'm not sure if your character was as old as mine.
I don't even know who your character was.
Thanks, Mark. I will say
But I don't
this.
know. I always was told that the Master was the oldest vampire that ever.
I was a god.
That ever.
I made all y'all. I will say
I
this.
think we need a spin-off series.
Yes. In all seriousness, though, for me as a young actress or actor, whatever, I loved working in a genre that wasn't a procedural or, you know, a straight genre, because life is hard enough. Like, we don't need to go to work and like repeat the same things we're struggling with in our own life. So for me, going and getting to be in this, you know, fantastical world was really exciting and very freeing, actually. I feel there's a lot of freedom when you're acting in a world that's undefined by social conditioning and social norms and our own universe. So for me, it was a great experience.
It just made me feel like a badass. And I never feel like a badass in my normal day-to-day life, so being able to fight vampires made me feel really cool and special. That's it.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I love the fantastical. I mean, as far as approaching it differently than any other role, I didn't. You know, I just made it real for me. But the thing was being fantastical and then having to be killed. That's like, I was like, well, you don't want to die because you don't want to leave the show. So I was like, you know, from being a fan of vampires and how everything lives, and when you die, you know, your state, that's it. And I told, you know, I was telling Josh Wheaton, why are you killing me? I don't understand. And then he would go, look, you're gonna die, and that's it. And I go, he goes, and I can't bring back dead vampires. I go, because I was a fan, I go, Christopher Lee, they killed the victim, put it over the sand in the coffin, dropped the blood, he came back to life, and he went, let me think about it. He's still thinking.
Yeah, what you said is true. I didn't think of it as an alternate reality or a fantasy or anything. I didn't know anything about vampires, but I just did my research and tried to invest it with as much reality as possible. And I lived in this church buried under Sunnydale. And at the beginning, they used real dirt, and everybody was getting sick because there's so much dust and silicone in the dust, so they got rid of that authenticity. But it was very smart. And I played with that boy, and they told me to lay off the boy. Apparently I was talking to him a little too luridly. And so they told me to back off of that. And so I just was going, you know, moment to moment and playing it. Yeah, that, I guess, does that answer the question?
It answers a question. It answers a question.
Good.
Oh, do I have stuff?
Yeah.
I wasn't like any kind of superhero or anything. I didn't have any special strength other than coming out.
That's huge. That's
And you know, I guess there was the first episode I did was the Halloween one, and I think I turned into a vampire pirate.
A pirate? Yeah.
But I don't know. And then, you know, of course, Nick Xander kicks my ass because he's in combat. It's the only time that he got enough strength to do that, I guess, because he's in that costume. But I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but I will tell you, my very last day, I chose to do my own stunt, and they probably were like, well, you're dying anyway, so. And that did not go very well. They had a rig, you know, as I get pulled up, and I was in a harness, and I never really, I'm a pretty big guy, still am. And they just dropped this thing, and it just pulled me up, and I missed the mat coming down. So I was like, okay, well, at least I did my own stunts. But it kind of like pulled my leg out of that was the worst part. It just kind of like, because it just ripped out of nowhere, and you're like, well, I didn't feel bad. But I didn't sue him or anything. But I would like some compensation. So, but that was fun. It was worth the experience because it looked very real.
Yeah.
It's a nice business to take.
And I got to use a flamethrower, so thank you.
Well, so it's been 25 years. What do you think the legacy of the series has been, either to you or that you have heard from people, and how it's impacted either people individually or the way that we tell or think about stories or life?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is that, and the one that I take away and talk to people about all the time, is that I think it was the first television show where a woman actually had the power over life and death in some way. And that broke a lot of ground, I think, in 1997. I did the first season, so we didn't know it was a big hit. We were just making the story. And but that, I mean, and that's worth everything. Just the fact that it began to open that door a little bit. And then the door's still half closed, more than half closed. You need to keep opening that door to everybody. But yeah.
That was great.
Well, I would just say, I agree with you 100%, Mark. That's a great answer and definitely important. I think that for me, from my perspective, the legacy is so much bigger than the show ever was. The legacy is like all of you guys now, the worldwide, fandom that has kept the show going, that has introduced it to new generations, that has kept, follow all of us that were so blessed and lucky to be on the show. You guys have supported our careers. It's a very symbiotic relationship we all have, and, it's just grown so much. What started as everybody's like the Scooby Gang now, I feel like. Everybody in the fandom.
Is it strange to see yourself on aisles and on calendars and on, I have you walk through these vendor halls and you must see art that people have rendered of you. Like, you've also created your own legacies. Is there anything you want to share about that experience?
Mark has a
I was
lollipop
talking
too.
all through the question. What was the question again?
I couldn't repeat it if I tried. I said, so we talked about sort of the spiritual legacy, but I was interested in, especially with the recent acquisition of Disney buying 20th Century Fox and starting to rebrand and to put out new Buffy merchandise. What is it like to, walk in these
who
halls?
doesn't want an action figure of themselves?
Right. Do you have one of yours?
I have a couple from the show, not just one. And yes, I have them. I do have them in the garage somewhere. They're great. That's like, as an actor, you want to have an action figure, you want to do a musical episode, you want to, there's a couple things you want to check off your list. And Buffy, for some, did too. For me, did the action figure.
I think there's something, it's like being immortalized in a way you really can't see coming sometimes.
Yeah, I have an action figure from Buffy, and I have one from Animal House. And somewhere in Brooklyn, there is 12 bobblehead dolls from the, what's it called, Seinfeld, the Maestro, that I don't have them, but they're in Brooklyn somewhere waiting for me to go. Yeah. So I have, from 3 different shows, I have 3 different bobbleheads, so I guess I could die now.
No.
It's too late to get on the Dick Cavett show, which is all I used to have.
So I have a question for, especially I'd like to hear from our Slayers, but anyone can answer. The show ended with a very powerful, uplifting, encouraging message. And the two of you and your empowerment and your bitter fighting at the end was such a big part of that. Has any fan ever talked to you, and this is about, you can all answer a version of this, but do fans come up to you and talk talk about the kind of impacts that you've had on them.
Oh, all the time.
All the time.
It's very touching. It's,
Yeah.
I never imagined that going into this, into this role ever, and it's just wow. It like brings tears in my eyes. It touches my heart. Like it's beautiful. Yeah. And not only, I mean, in different areas of being a woman, being Latina, being gay on the show, like all these different things have done so much to so many young girls in a positive way. That yes, it happens all the time, and I feel very grateful, for sure. Yeah. Wow, I was part of that. Oh my God. What? Like that affected you? That really you made that decision? Oh my God. It's like, I did something positive in this world. Or, I don't know what the name is writing, but
You were a huge part of it.
No.
Sarah.
Sarah, do you ever? No.
I mean, yes, all the time, but I feel like it's mostly like Buffy as a whole. I feel like there's like a character that almost anyone can relate to on Buffy, and I think that's why it's such like there's such a huge fan base behind it. I feel like so many people can relate to any number of characters on the show, and so yeah, and I'm just one of those, and so yeah, I get it all the time when I come to these conventions, how much my character or the show as a whole has impacted your lives, and yeah, it's incredibly touching, and yeah.
Lori was also a very positive influence.
I was going to say that because when you talk about getting to see women kick ass, you're the first woman who just wrecks Buffy. Like she's going up against dudes up until you, and then you're so much stronger than any of them ever were. Like I think people probably come up to you and say all the time that you had the same impact.
They do and they don't. Sometimes they say, I hated you.
I get that all the time.
I know. But you know what, that's why it's funny, this is a little divergence from what you're saying, but when the show first started, obviously you guys know I was friends with Eliza from Bring It On, and we talked about auditioning, and after my first episode aired, I made the mistake of going on the posting board. And people were like, who is this person? She's awful, we hate this character, she's overacting. Actually, it was the second episode, because I think I came in at the very end of the first episode, or there was a teaser at the end of, anyway, whatever. And I learned quickly not to rely on feedback at that point from people who were passionate about the show, because they were for the heroine, they were for Buffy, and they wanted her to succeed. But yes, Glory was not, as much as she's considered a villain and a big bad, and yes, she did kill Buffy. Sorry. But she was just someone who was secure in herself, knew what she wanted, and pursued her own happiness. And there's something empowering about that.
Yeah.
They may have questions.
I know. We have a lot of, we are going to take audience questions. I wanted to ask one more of all of you before we turn it to audience questions. First of all, you've mentioned this. Buffy fans are a very loyal bunch. So is there anything that any of you are working on that you'd like to talk and tell us about? Because I'll be going home and finding it. What are you working on now? Claire, anything?
Just trying to get through this panel. One day at a time.
You're doing good.
Do all right. I will say this. I am working on other stuff. I've been doing a lot of music stuff. I'm working on a new album and producing and writing. I really love that. And I'm still out there trying to book jobs. It never gets easier, it seems. But still great opportunities coming my way. I will say another thing I really appreciate about Buffy is the fan base also within the industry. I've I've gotten agents because of like their love for the show Buffy. I've gotten even like straight roles because like some friends of mine have done a show called Dwight in Shining Armor, and it's on the BYU channel. They've got another one that's now out, but they did 5 seasons of that, and they literally, I grew up with these guys, and we were in the same church back when I was a kid, so we've all kind of kept in touch, and they just called and said, we'd love to have you on the show. We love you on Buffy, and the whole series, they said, is kind of based on like their love for Buffy, because it's another female that, you know, is in high school and she's fighting off all these demons and things. So I appreciate that so much too, because it's really helped my career just continue to blossom. And it wasn't very much that I did, but I guess when you do something that means something to people, it really can help all of us, you know. So thank you, Buffy. And Joss.
I quit in 2000 and walked away from the business pretty much altogether, bought a restaurant in Wisconsin. So soon after Buffy, I did the first season and didn't, as I said earlier, I didn't know that it was a hit. I didn't care, it was just the work. And since I quit, I've been doing more plays, which is what I originally did, and I was tired of myself, I was bored with myself, I was tired of the work, it wasn't asking much of me, so I quit and tried to be somebody else. But I got drawn back into the theater, and I was reminded of where the passion is, where the heart of the work is, and where it comes from, and how important it is within me, and that was great. I've done a couple of films since then, but little stuff, independent films, low-budget independent films with young directors, because I'd much rather stay hungry, as the Twisted Sister band says, and work hungry than I would work in those big-budget things. I mean, if somebody wanted to give me a bunch of $100,000 bills for blowing things up, or shooting a lot of people, I'd take the money. But if I had my choice, my druthers, which I do have, I'd rather just work small, so I do that. I'm writing a book about my brother, my youngest brother. So that's, I mean, what was the question? But to circle back, because I didn't know anything about vampires, I didn't know anything. I wasn't a big fan of vampires. I don't know, there were vampires actually from a long ago. My research was all Nosferatu and Murnau and Shadow of a Vampire, the great film with Defoe and Malkovich. And I left, I was done after the first season. I went back and did a couple, and the mood on the set had changed after it became a big hit. It was still fun, it was still good writing, still good directing, still good people, but there was always this thing out there of celebrity and fame that was out there sort of drawing people away just a little bit from the work. So but it's easy to ignore, because when you do the work, you do the work. And being reintroduced then to this phenomenon of Buffy through fans, through these conventions, and I've done a number of them. I do them if they're somewhere I want to go, and is really a wonderful thing. And it's a whole nother level of the experience of having done it, because I get to know people that I didn't know and didn't work with, because I basically worked pretty much alone in that church under the
Mark, same with me. My character was not interfacing a lot with anyone except Buffy or like the Minions. So I get what you're saying. I've become friends through the convention.
Yeah, you know all these other people. The same has happened to me with the movie Animal House, where we made this movie, we went on to, it's just a job, man. You do the job, you go do the next job. And then, but then 44 years later now with Animal House, people are still talking about it, so people still want to know what it was like to work with John Belushi, a different age group, and mostly men. But in the 44 years since, I've we bonded up there in Eugene, Oregon, when we made the movie, and there was that bond, but then you go on to do the next job and you create another family and you bond with those people, and you do the next job and you do that. But this family from Animal House, as this family from these conventions with you all and with these people, it's a whole other experience, and it's really kind of a wonderful experience, one that I was suspicious of at first. Because I think I've said a couple of times, I'm still suspicious, and I think rightfully so, of the celebrity fan dynamic. I'm not sure that it's completely healthy. But then what's healthy anymore? You can only eat so many grapes. You have to have a cheeseburger. But anyways, but I'm grateful to get a chance to re-experience Buffy, re-experience these people, and re-experience you, and through these conventions, through this phenomenon.
Oh gosh, how do I follow? That was good. Yeah, I don't know, I'm still working when given the opportunity. But you know, mostly working on raising 2 little kids right now. So that's kind of my big job right now. Trying to get them old enough to not have to rely on me so much. But, my littlest one just turned 1, so I celebrated his birthday party yesterday. That's why I wasn't here. But yeah, it's been emotional roller coaster, the craziest job ever. But yeah, no, I still do. Mostly indie, like short films and features and stuff, and commercials and whatever. But that's it. It's kind of what I do, and I dabble in some ceramics here and there, when I can. We're not raising 2 small children. That's a big children have now, but.
Yeah, I mean, after Buffy, I just kept trying to keep your career trajectory going up, and because you have Buffy, if you have a sad day, you're like, at least I did Buffy. So, and I use that all the time, because even if I've done stuff that's the most recent, I'm like, did you see Shrink Next Door? Did you see them? Did you see these movies? Or did you see American Splendor? And they're like, I go, did you see Buffy? And they're like, yeah. And that's where they know me from, but, which is great. And also, what I found out, which was pretty funny, because I perform a lot doing comedy, and when they ask me to do like a set or stand-up or whatever at a place that I haven't been, and they don't know me or anything, and the host will go, and from Buffy. I'm like, from Buffy? They're doing it right now, and they do it all the time. So, and I'm not sad about it, But yeah, I'm moving forward. I'm about to go into a movie in a few months. That's a period piece, but I'm not allowed to talk about it. But I can tell you each one by one what it is. But I can't tell you. But yeah, so I'm very excited about that.
You can tell me right now. I won't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. I don't know. I do? Okay, let me think. Okay, let me think of something to say. I actually left the industry. I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to do film and TV. I have my reasons, but we don't have time for that. But I never stopped doing commercials because they pay really well, and they were very easy to do. And I moved to Mexico, and I moved to France, and I've been kind of living around the world, raising my kids, making them international citizens of the world. I don't know. I think about coming back because I thought I was done, and then I had these few random auditions. And then I went to network for both of them, and I actually had a good time. And I was like, wow, I liked it again, But then so I jumped back in. I did a couple things. I got to work with Viola Davis, which was really cool because I love her so much. And she's even better in person. She's just the most humblest, earthy, open human being. And so, but then the pandemic hit.
then I did something else, and I did an episode of Good Girls, and then the pandemic hit. So now I'm like, I don't know if I want to keep doing it, you know? It takes work. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of work, and when you're like a single mom, you don't have that much energy left to like invest in something like that or keep chasing something like that. So am I open? Would I like to continue to work? Absolutely. I realize this is something I'm probably always going to love to do till the day I die. When I thought I was done, like in the Talon right after Buffy, but I realized, wow, no, there's nothing else that like feeds that, you know, that gives you that satisfaction. So I'll always be open to doing anything, you know, some things. Actually, I was supposed to do a film, but the pandemic hit. I don't know what's happening with that. But yeah, so I don't really know what direction I'm heading in, but I'm totally open to it all. And, you know, I love art, so any way that I can refill that cup, you know, I'm open to it. I'm not, you know, before be like, oh, I don't want to audition for a soap opera. Oh, I'm not going to audition for a co-star. Oh, that's so stupid. Now I'm like, if it's a beauty, you know, if it's a story, even if it doesn't pay, like, I mean, we're artists, right? We do it for the love. I mean, it's great when it pays, of course. But I miss that. I miss being creative and being an artist. And so, however it comes my way, I'm open to that. It may not be even acting, maybe something else. But I'll keep you guys informed. How's that? Thank you for being here. Okay, it's funny, my son has a reoccurring on a soap, and I'm like, this is the best job ever. Like, I totally need to get on a soap, so I told my agent, I'm like, I really want to be, like, get me on a soap as like a heavily reoccurring, not series regular, I don't want it, so. Right, exactly, not totally committed. I touched on this yesterday, so I'll make it quick. I actually just did a nice article, the cover of Wingman magazine, so if you want to read all about what I'm doing, you can check that out. But I have 2 podcasts right now, one produced by CBS and Rad and Sarah Entertainment. It's called Fanatics, F-A-N-A-D-D-I-C-T-S. It's about what people love, but not their careers. So as I mentioned yesterday, like, Julie Benz came on and talked about how much she loves The View. J. August Richards came on and talked about how much he loves Ani DeFranco. Michael C. Hall came on and talked about his love for Chip Gaines on Fixer Upper. So it's a really fun podcast based in fandom. My other podcast is a comedy podcast, which you should totally come on. It's called The Parent Lounge. We basically drink and talk about being parents, and you know, like it's Jamie Kaler, who's a great comedian, myself, Jeff Foxworthy's been on. We have a rotating guest every Tuesday, so you can find that every Tuesday. We go live. There's no production value to it. Don't get your hopes up. It's just like they're totally separate. One is like, you know, studio produced. The other was we're just sitting in our kitchens. I just looked this up because this kind of was funny. If you follow me at all, you know I like to play in celebrity poker tournaments, but I've been asked to play in a Hollywood curling celebrity charity event, which I have not responded to yet, but I think I'm going to say yes. That's happening July 2nd, so I'm going to learn how to curl, which there's no Olympic age on being a curler, so I just want to put it out there that, you know, it's a possibility I could one day be in the Olympics. And of course, as Sarah mentioned, and Iyari, my most important job, raising my 4 kids, who are amazing, so. And Iyari and I did talk about our oldest, who are 14, both of our oldest are 14, having them do a Buffy watch, because they haven't done it, so maybe we should like start a little TikTok and have them, you know, do their reactions to the show or something.
That idea.
And Sarah, I'm jealous you have babies.
I'm like,
Don't
I
get me
think
started.
I'm 2. I don't mind.
Oh no, but her
I think I'm
3-year-old?
2 and done.
Tell her
So
about your
her-
3-year-old.
Yeah.
Everything your 3-year-old watches.
Oh, her favorite character is Darth Vader. She loves Star Wars. She's seen all of Harry Potter. She loves Jurassic Park.
That's my kids. You know what? Sarah, I never control.
I
the
never
only-
censor. I'm just like,
No, the only thing I censor is sex, because I'm like,
Well,
I don't
yeah,
like-
yeah.
I already tried to explain that, and that was like, I had to do the whole period thing. It's like- but with my kids, the only thing they don't watch is Disney or Nickelodeon. They're allowed to watch everything else. So they love like Walking Dead, Star Wars. We just saw the new Top Gun. They all sat in the theaters. Oh my God. Don't get me started. It was amazing.
It was good.
Anyway, okay, I've
All
talked
right.
too much.
Never. Audience questions, I have this really long mic. We have 10 more minutes. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask? You're gonna need a train like a ride.
Well, I did want to say I mean, whatever brought you around to that audition, thank you so much for saying yes. The show absolutely would not have been the same if it hadn't been each one of you guys. I mean, had it been possible for it to have been anybody else, it might have been, and I'm glad it was you guys. The question that I do have actually is for you, Claire, because you worked with Eliza before, and she's also great at kind of doing those very kind of internal instability, if you will, kind of characters and stuff. I mean, is that anything the two of you ever discussed, like what your process is to get in kind of that kind of a mental state?
Well, we've done 3 projects together. So when we did Bring It On, we were like 17, 18. So there was no internalizing it. Let me let you in on a secret, that movie was just one big party. It took 6 months to film. Buffy, we were never on the show together. True Calling, which I went up to Canada to do her series. Yes, it was it was like the original Dollhouse, the original Westwood, and Dollhouse and True Calling, I don't know.
I like
Yeah, so no, we've never really talked about acting. We talk about life and family and friends, and you know, she lived with my sister for a long. My sister actually married her and her husband. Her new husband, Peter, or her only husband, sorry. Thinking of 2, Charisma and Julie, have been divorced and married. But, you know, we've just been friends for a very long time, so we haven't ever actually talked about acting. We've probably talked about everything else, you know? So it's sorry to disappoint you if you're disappointed.
Because you guys were both really, really good at kind of doing that internal space, and I was always very impressed by yours and the way that Eliza does it.
Oh, thanks. Well, I can tell you she's like one of the most intelligent, coolest people I know. So, I mean, she's just a great person and, you know, has 2 beautiful children of her own now. Yes, Born and Bodhi.
There are other fandoms that have been around for a long time and they've moved on to movies or sequels. I'm thinking Star Trek, Star Wars. Given the time that has passed, is there any chance, you think, of having a continuation of the Buffyverse, either television or movie?
I think you're asking the wrong people. Because I don't know anyone who's been a part of the show that wouldn't, in some capacity, say yes to being a part of it again. But, you know, they have to figure out, and by they, I mean, you know, Joss and whomever else owns the IP. I'm not even sure if it's Fox still or I don't know.
It's
but
Disney.
Now it's Disney.
Disney
now it's
owns
Disney.
it.
Well, hey, listen, Disney has got a lot of money. So, you know, people kind of like shove their nose up at Disney, but why not? They, you know, if they've got the money to put into like some cool iteration of the project, I think it would need to include Sarah. I think it would need to include, in some capacity, Joss, you know, for better or worse, whatever that is. But I don't know, I would love to see something happen. They did the comics, you know, the comics were there, but, you know, it's a bit like Doctor Who with the movies. They haven't really done, like, but British TV really baffles me.
Forever.
Doctor Who, well, they keep recasting the Doctor, which people are not happy about, by the way, half the time, you know? With the new announcement, they're very unhappy. So sometimes fandom can get toxic in that way as well. I remember years ago when they did announce a new Buffy, everybody was very vehemently against it. So I don't know what would make you guys happy. It's really about you guys and then the people who own the IP.
Thank you.
Next question, yeah, come on.
I was just wondering, do you guys have a favorite Buffy episode? I'm familiar with the show, like, do you each have a favorite episode? What is it?
I'm sure after I finish washing the whole show, I will. Do you guys?
I have a favorite episode that I did, which was Potential, when I find out that I'm a Slayer. That was a really fun episode for me and my character to play. I mean, I got to slay a vampire and do some stunts. It was really super cool. And that was my first time running into someone who was dressed like me and had the same hair as me. And I seriously thought I was being replaced. place. Whoa, that's your stunt double. Whoa. Stunt double. That's pretty cool. But yeah, but that was my favorite episode to do, so I don't, yeah. Different, but still an answer.
Yeah, I had a good time in the last episode that I did of the first season where I got to kill Buffy.
I also like killing Buffy.
I got to say that great line when she's lying face down in the puddle. I like your dress.
Yeah.
And it was the longest scene that I played in the whole season. The scene with her, and she's Sarah, and she's quite a good actress, and it was really fun to play with her. And there was more. I mean, I played with that other guy, Thompson. What's his name? I can't remember his name. And the boy. I played a lot with the boy. He managed to grow up to be all right. But playing with a child is one thing, but playing with another scene partner who's really a partner, where you really feel that energy between the two of you, and push it back and just play with it, which is where the fun is. That was great too. So I liked that episode.
Wait, how many times did Buffy die on this show?
Twice.
Just twice.
Her
Just
two
two.
killers
So
are
wait,
here on the stage.
once by you and once by you? Well, that's pretty cool, you guys. That's super awesome.
No spoilers, but.
Oh yeah.
Do you have a favorite episode?
Well, my favorite season is 5. So
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Love
I think
Buffy.
that's one of the favorites, like all around, right?
Yeah, I know,
Like,
Hush, I think
season
is my
5
favorite
or
episode.
something?
Hush.
Yeah.
I have a lot of favorites, but I think Hush.
Yeah.
I was disappointed I wasn't in Hush, but they were like, we don't want any like distractions.
Yeah.
And I was like, so I'm a distraction. Yeah, basically.
You know, like you, I like that season, and I have favorite episodes there, but I have love for just the creation of the show coming off the movie of the original pilot and then the recast pilot that aired. You know, the first pilot, because I remember watching it with the different Willow, and and I watched it and I go, the makeup wasn't good, the stuff wasn't good, but the writing was so good and the fighting was so good. I go, this is amazing, and then and I watched it develop into what it became. So I always go back to the pilot. I go, because you watch a lot of shows, it takes them a while to get their footing, and Josh, they were so smart, like it worked. I mean, it got better, don't get me wrong, but right at the beginning, it was good. It was really good. When you go back and watch it, you go, this whole thing works right away. It was really thought out. So I always go back to that.
Yeah.
For me, the Wish, which was an episode I was in, I was very wishful and hopeful that I was going to stay on the show because I was part of the Scooby Gang in that, and so that was a lot of fun. But of course, Phases was for me to film some of my favorite scenes in the locker room and all that stuff. So I only did 6, but the show is just great. I finally got around to watching it. And because I had friends that were like, we're watching it again, and I'm like, I better start watching it. And it is great. I'm glad I got to be a small part of it.
Next question. I think we have time for one more.
No pressure.
Bring it. Good. That shirt is amazing.
Thank you.
Let me see. I want to see.
Yeah, okay. So obviously we're all here because we're like geeking out over you all. So what I wanted to know is who you all kind of like geek out over. Like what shows or what people are you like, ah?
I mean, I don't want to brag, but I've seen every season of Survivor, and I got to meet Jeff Probst because he was shooting on the same lot. He was like not a Survivor thing. It wasn't like the finale or anything, which I would have flipped out of if I could have gone. But he was shooting something else, and so I went up, during my break and talked to him, and like he's just such a cool guy. guy. Like, he made that show, he's a huge part of that show, what makes it successful. Like, he's a real thinker on his feet, like, he's compassionate, empathetic, and also very smart. And he loves directing. He actually directed a feature, I don't know, a decade ago. But anyway, I'm a Survivor fan. I'm also I watch TV or films every night. So the series that and I can't choose, so I'm always rotating. Here's what I'm watching right now, I'll tell you. I'm watching, obviously, the new season of The Boys. I'm watching Inventing Anna, which I'm like halfway through. I'm watching Yellow Jackets, which I absolutely love. Sheena Ricci is amazing. What else am I watching? There's one more. My kids wanted to watch the Halo series. Very violent, but also good. And can't wait for the new Ted Lasso or Cobra Kai.
Yes.
So, and I watched every episode of Game of Thrones twice. And read the books.
No, I haven't.
Nobody.
I'm a fanatic on streaming, so I love it, and sometimes I'll even torture myself if it's a platform that they're not coming out all at once. Because sometimes I've been there, I go, I'm not watching this 8 hours straight. But I will watch, like, Game of Thrones, of course. Loved it. Big True Blood fan. Loved that up until, he got good. I liked him bad vampire the whole time, but I love that show. I love a show called Mr. In Between. I don't know if you've seen that. That's really good. But I mean, I watch everything, like, I geek out while I'm watching it. You're saying, what are you geeking out on? And it's like, a lot. Like, when I meet these people, I'm like, oh my God. Like for instance, when you said Ted Lasso, and then when I was talking to Jason Sudeikis, he was on a show of the HBO show about baseball. What's his Danny McBride show?
Yes. Again, I'm blanking on that.
But he was so excited to talk about that show. Not Saturday Night Live at the time. You know what I mean? He was really excited. So you can tell when people it's very exciting.
You know what, though, Mike, I agree with you. Like, I would be the worst critic because I'm always like, there's something, people are like, oh, I really didn't like this or that. I'm like, I really loved it. I just love the art of making film and television. I'm very happy with whatever I'm watching.
Well, the one other thing I'll say is when I'm watching a show like Buffy, I watch Buffy, I go, this is the best show ever, right? But then there's other shows. I'll watch Breaking Bad and I go, this is the best show ever made. You know what I mean? Like,
have you watched Murders Only in the Building?
Yes.
It's so good. Oh my God. You have to watch it. Go home immediately tonight and watch.
Or Dexter, come on.
Oh, yeah.
That was my first official binge watch.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop myself, and I'm not like really into like horror, but he was like Batman. But not really. And then I was happy with how everything ended, but the kind of, and then this last season again. So I think I would probably freak out. I sat next to, who's the girl that played Deborah? What's her name?
Jennifer Carpenter.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
And I said hi. I was really kind of like, I love the way her character and everything, it's just so cool. And Back to the Future, any of those folks.
So you mentioned Dexter New Blood. We had to deal with Showtime where the podcast Fanatics, we did a 10-episode arc when each episode was airing, and each episode my co-host and I would kind of recap at the start, but the main interview was one of the cast of Dexter New Blood talking about what they loved. So if you like that show, definitely check that out.
Well, my first convention ever was in Blackpool, England. And I think I was like 19 years old, and one of the guests there was Robert Patrick. And I totally geeked out over him. Like Terminator 2 was just, oh my God. That was definitely a geek moment. And, and then I had another convention where I was flying, and actually it was the same convention, and it was my first international flight, and I was in first class, and I was like, wow, this is cool. I mean, I should fly internationally all the time. And in first class with me was Jason Priestley, and I was a huge 90210 fan growing up, and I was like, oh my god. Sitting right there. He was my favorite. I had a crush on Brandon, not Dylan. I was one of anyway. I'm still geeking out over it, obviously, right here. Anyway, on my way back from that convention, I was not in first class. I was like, wait, what's going on here? Why am I in economy? I was in, like, I don't get this. Isn't this how people fly internationally? But that's not the case. And I never flown first class internationally. But yeah, that was my geek moments. You have one? You have one?
I'm trying to think, I don't
John
know.
Belushi?
I don't know.
Working with him? I mean, come on, John Belushi.
Well, yeah, John Belushi, yeah, I don't know, I don't geek out, I guess is the phrase, about
That's what we're using here.
yeah, with you kids today, about too much of anything. But it was fun to work with John Belushi. There's a great story I'll tell you sometime about the first time I met John Belushi. I was on a plane in first class back in the days when actors got to fly first class with Jessica Lange, and I still see her hands in my dreams. She has just the most wonderful hands. They're like
What are they
hands
doing
that
in
have
your
worked.
dreams?
They're just really big, strong, working hands. Hands that have milked a cow and maybe made a statue or something. But in terms of stuff that to watch, there's so much good, and we just came through COVID, or we didn't come through it, we're not done, we're not done. Good for you wearing your mask. But there's so much good stuff to watch now. This long form that has arisen, I don't know where it started, Sopranos maybe? This sort of long form format is such a great format for actors, I think. It almost makes me want to get back. Nothing makes me really want to come back to Hollywood. But it makes me want to do that work because there's such a great, the long form gives you so much a chance to develop a character, to layer a character and really build some stuff in. So there's a lot of good stuff. You guys who are coming up in this time are really lucky. Oh, I got to work with Ralph Bellamy once, but see, nobody in this room knows who Ralph Bellamy is.
I do.
Trading Places. And His Girl Friday. It was great to work. Oh, and Eddie Bracken, I worked with Eddie Bracken once. Eddie Bracken was in a lot of Preston Sturges movies. And he had a scene, and John Landis said, it was called a film called Oscar. Landis said, okay, Eddie, we're just going to shoot the back of your head. So a little makeup and that's all you need, because you're watching this limousine arrive. And Eddie said, what do you mean about? He'd never done a dirty shot, a shot that was over the shoulder, because he worked with Sturgis, who shot a lot of masters and medium shots and close-ups, and gave the actors room to move. And so Eddie said, just over my shoulder, my left shoulder? And he said, yeah. And he said, okay, give me a minute. He went to the prop man and he got some glue and he got a piece of string and he pulled it and glued the string to his ear here, and so that when the limo pulled up and the shot was over his shoulder, he could pull this string, because they couldn't see his hand, and wiggle his ear. Because he could not do a scene where he didn't have some shtick. Where he didn't have a bit, something to do. And that was a revelation.
Just stop, let's take two. Just stop moving the ear, please.
Without the ear wiggle, he couldn't do it without the ear wiggle. He had to participate.
Oh, that's a good story. I like that.
He was a great guy.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I think everyone was just, keep it, you can redo it again. Just one last thing, I promise. We do have one more hour with the charity auction. Some of the highlights are here. There's also some of the physical items are upstairs on the second floor. And don't forget to stop by the Sunnydale Mall. Thank you, everybody.